I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guarantee you they will. They're going to eat this up. When I interviewed Todd Opalski, he made a comment that I found very, very fascinating. I'd love to get your opinion on it. He said that when it comes to the basics, whether that's shooting, tactics, whatever it might be, he is in his life has never seen someone so good at the basics as a Delta Force assault team is across the line. He said it's machines in action over and over and over again. What is your opinion on his assessment?
Hands down, and I would say the same about any good organization. If you're running sports analogies or not, or even in the military with the Rangers, Special Forces. I remember a friend of mine, even the name Special Forces, it's because you have general general missions and you have special missions. Like, that's where Special Forces came from. Is it's like these are out of the ordinary, not general military operations. But he really said, man, we should have called ourselves guys that do the basics really fucking well forces. Like, because Special Forces really, it just has this weird connotation. One, that you're better than everyone else, or two, you know what I mean? But it's just the basics. But the interesting thing that I would admit to people is your basics get piled on though, right? Like shooting, lying in the prone with your weapon supported and squeezing the trigger and hitting the black dot. Everyone starts there, right? Those are the basics. But the basics end up becoming running and shooting. You know what I mean? Like your basics become more than just the basics. It's like, I'm a jujitsu guy. It's like a black belt in jujitsu. You still do the basics better than everyone else, but your basics are way more sophisticated. So while I would agree with that assessment wholeheartedly, it's a little bit of a game, right? Like, um, yeah, our basics aren't your basics. We started where you started, and that's the beauty of the unit too. Like, when you go to selection, they have a class on wearing boots. They teach you how to tie your boots. They teach you how to carry your feet. They teach you how to wear a rucksack. So you start at those basics, just like I'm talking when you're finishing the operator training course and you're literally running at full speed, hitting targets 20, 30 meters away on the run. You didn't just get there. You started at the basics. So yes, I agree. But does that make sense? Like
It
you're
makes perfect
you're a
sense.
black belt. It's like, it's like a UFC fighter or a fighter. Like you're doing the basics. You're blocking, you're jabbing, you're hooking, you know what I mean? But you just do it with more precision. You do it faster.
I just have a couple more questions on Delta, and then we're going to hop into some other parts of your life here. But I really want to keep digging in this because this has been wildly not just entertaining, but incredibly informative. One of the things I think people get a perception of who watch maybe a lot of movies or spy shows is that there's always these moments where like the world's going to blow up in 5 minutes, and then a red phone rings somewhere, the phone gets picked up, and then a top secret, ghost team dispatches and save the world. Does stuff like that ever actually occur where the calls are that close? Or is that just kind of a figment of Hollywood's imagination that we're just constantly picking up the phone to save the world?
Yeah. So I would say yes, yes, and no, right? So if you're doing your job right, you're leaning forward on all these things. Like you're hearing the grumbling, and you're seeing the people move. It's like 9/11 when that happened. Everyone was like, "What the hell?" Just like what happened with Israel. It's like, what the hell? How did we miss all of this planning? So usually you're seeing the planning and you're hearing the planning, and you're prepared, or you're starting to pull threads out of it before it even happens. That's the state of things. But it's also a haystack, right? And one of the things that I always get frustrated with, just like with 9/11 and just like what happened with Hamas coming out of Gaza and invading Israel, people are like, why didn't they see this? Why didn't Man, because you're dealing with thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of information, and some of them have more veracity than others. You have to triage what it is we're going to keep, what it is we're going to look at, what, so there's just so much information that you're constantly trying to stay on top of. So when they do get the jump on you, though, and something happens, then it does happen. Like when you're in the unit, you're on a rotation where you're on alert, and you need to be within an hour of the building. So you live that way. You're standing there watching your kid soccer, and you're constantly ready to be called in. And you're usually called in for some response of something we didn't expect, right? Somebody attacked something, somebody did something, a hostage was taken, that type of deal. So you do live that life and you practice that life. So you practice it a lot more. I've been talking about that practice and rehearsal. So we were constantly getting called in and making sure that we could hit these timelines. So the standard, I think, is 4 hours. So from something occurring that we didn't expect and getting the phone call to being wheels up is 4 hours. And then practicing planning on the airplane and getting everything in motion that you need. So yeah, I can't think of it ever as dire as the movies. And yet you do live in a constant state of they could call me at any moment. Um, I think one of the things, I don't know why this just popped into my head. But when that CH-47 went down, Chisel, I think it was called, no, Extortion, and all those Navy SEALs died. We were called in on an alert for that to support that organization, and it was a huge eye opener for us because up until that event, you would be tasked with, hey, you're the casualty officer. So like, hey, if anyone gets hurt or anyone gets killed, you need to have your uniform ready. You need to understand, you're on call to go anywhere in the country to go talk to that family. Well, like that was one guy's job. And then when Extortion went down and it's 30 different people, that now became an additional duty of mine. I always had my uniform ready. I always had a bag packed just in case we went through some sort of mass casualty event where every single officer in the building now had to deploy and go talk to families. So I think it's more like that than the ticking time bomb. It's like, hey, get to Washington and brief these guys. Hey, get to such and such in place and talk to this ambassador. That type of deal.
Do you what happens if a guy gets selected? Maybe he's been on, I talked to Chili Palmer about this a little bit. A guy gets there, maybe he's a great operator, but he's got personality conflict issues. He crushed it in OTC, crushed it in selection, maybe he's done a deployment, but he's really like there's problems outside of the combat.